Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome back to part two of making this logo. And in this part two, I'm gonna finish all the lighting and also the materials and rendering. So let's get started. This is where we left off in part one. We created the geometry, which is the floor, the inside, the outline of the font, and the frame as well. And let's start with the lighting first, and then we'll move on to materials and the camera and rendering settings. So for the lighting, we had IES lights and also regular lights. So let's start with the area light here, and I'm gonna spin this thing around. And actually, let's do it this way. And starting with this light, it's gonna be on the bottom. And let's put it about here. And let's rename it bottom. And for this one, we'll lower the intensity to 90. Change the colors to maybe 20% yellow. Turn on shadows, don't forget. And for details tab, we can change this to disk. And we'll do inverse squared, physically accurate for the fall off. And bring the fall off to about halfway. And this is basically going to be our first light. Now let's set up the second light. So we can just copy paste, rename this frontal, and what we can do is go to camera and set the active object as camera. So now we can look through the light, and we have to spin this around because the light was upside down. And we'll do something like this. It will be a light to the side a little bit, maybe something like that. And now we'll do camera, use camera default. So now we're back to the original state. And now we're just gonna move this light closer a little bit and make this a lot bigger. And for the intensity, we're gonna bring this down to about 40. And let's change the color to like a bluish color. And bring back the fall off to about halfway as well. And now here comes the fun part. We're gonna add some IES lights. If I go back to my reference here, as you can see, we had 4 IES lights, 2 on the sides and 2 on the bottom. And also we have this luminous material that goes around the frame. We'll do that in a second, but oops. Let's jump back to my original, and let me just move this down a little bit more. And now let's do some IES lights. So I'm going to start with the area light, and what I'm going to do is change it from area to IES. And now we can jump back to photometric, and where it says file name, we can load up the IES light profile. And there's a lot of IES lights available online that you can download, so you can just search free IES light pack, or just find any website that has them and start using them. But this is the one that I found here. It looks pretty nice. We can use this one, and let's position it in the right spot. So now it's facing down, as you can see this line here. So what you have to do is point it down like this, and let's do it one more time. Now as you can see, it's working right away. So now what we can do is go to the front view and position them in the right place. So one's going to be around here, and we'll do, for the intensity, we'll do about 1800, and we'll just copy paste to the other side. So now we have 2 of them, just like this. And I think, yeah, let's go to the side view. As you can see, I was kind of off. It wasn't right under the frame, so we can take these 2 and move them right under the icon. And now we can just copy paste this one more time. So go to the front view, and I'm holding command, by the way, or control. And for this light, I'm going to turn it around 90, and I'm going to do something like this. And now control to the other side, copy, turn it around 180, and just position it in place like this. So this is what we got so far. 4 IS lights and 2 regular lights. And for the last part, we're going to take this frame and make it editable, so by clicking C. And now if we switch to the face mode, we can select the interfaces. So we do UL for loop selection and holding shift. We'll select all the interfaces and we'll create our first material. So just double click, and we don't need any color, any reflectance. All we need is luminance 100%, and all we have to do is apply this to the frame, and we can jump back to the object mode, and we're basically done with overall lighting. So now let's just add a camera and jump inside the camera, and we're going to switch this to 25mm wide lens, and now we can just zoom in and get a nice shot of this logo type or icon, whatever you want to call it. So maybe we'll do something like this, and let's jump out of the camera and select all of these lights and camera that we created, and do Alt G to group them, and we'll rename this render. And just to get a quick preview, let's give it a quick render and just turn on some basic settings here. So we'll do physical, and we'll add some ambient occlusion. We'll set the blacks to about 50%, and we'll do contrast about 5%, and let's add a quick global illumination, and we'll do exterior preview. So it's not going to be the best result, but we just want to see what it looks like. And let's get this camera just about there. If it's really hard to see for you how you're framing your scene, what you can do is click on mode and your attribute manager, and go to view settings, view tab, and change the opacity of the borders here to whatever you like. I usually do about 80%, so now you can see how your shot is being framed. And now you can just bring this back to object mode, and let's give it a quick render, and let's see what this looks like so far. Alright guys, so the render just finished, and the result is not the best. It's noisy, as you can see, splotchy, but that's because we have low settings. But this is all the lights that we have so far. We do have to bump it up maybe a little bit more, and I think I'm missing one more light. I have to check in my reference, the overhead light, and we should be good in that case. So let me just double check here. Go to my reference, and yeah, we do have one more IS light. It's a highlight that goes on top of the frame here, as you can see if I turn it on and off. So let's add that light, and we should be good to go from there. So we can just copy and paste one of these lights, holding control, and let's rename this highlight. And now let's search for a different profile here. I think it's this one right here, the P175 is the one I used in my highlight. So let's open that up, and as you can see, this light is really bright, and actually in my case I used 8500 for the intensity. And now all we have to do is position this light properly so it's not overpowering the overall highlight. And let's try to rotate this 90, and also move this down something like this. And now let's move it back just a little bit, and yeah, that should be good. And maybe it's a little bit too strong, so we have to play around and move it back and forth and see how that looks like. But let's jump in the camera, and I think I was inside the camera, and frame this one more time and give it a quick little render. So as you can see, guys, it's much better. The scene overall is much brighter, but now we have to play around with the settings and make sure. And also the material is going to play a big part in this as well. So let's just jump by the camera, and we can rotate this light more and move it back so it's not too bright. Maybe something like this. Yeah, that should be good. And now let's do the final step, the material, and this is what is going to bring the look together, because right now everything's flat. So let's start with the floor. Let's rename this floor. Drop it in on the floor here. Go inside, and for the color, we're going to do a basic gradient. For the colors itself here, you can do anything you want, so I'll do maybe dark blue here, and I'm just going to copy this color, delete the white, and let's maybe make it a little bit brighter, and we're going to have a nice fall off, and we just have to change it to 2dV, so it goes up and down, and this is basically it for the color. Now let's move on to reflection. So we can delete the default specular. Let's add GGX. Let's set this to additive, and now we'll do 10% roughness, and let's see what else I have in here. For the global reflection and brightness and specular, we can do 30, 10, and 15, so it's not too bright. And for the bump, we'll do noise. Let's find noise. Jump inside here, and we're going to change this to electric. And same thing for the custom bump map. We're going to drag this over to electric, and we're going to set this to about 5%. And now for the last step, I think, let's see here. For roughness, we'll click on this black little arrow, and we'll put in Fresnel, so we have a nice fall off. And for the bump itself, make sure you turn that on, and in here we're gonna do let's see, I think it's in surfaces, and we'll do wood, and inside here change the strength to 5%, and jump inside. Make sure you change the colors to black and white, so the bump can work. As you can see, it's working pretty good. And now for the grain, we can keep it at 30, or we can bump it up, and maybe let's play around with these settings here. I'm just going to scale this up to maybe 145, and that should be it for the material on the back wall or the floor. Now let's move on to the frame itself. So we can rename this frame. You can do any color you want, but let's just do a lighter version of the blue, maybe something like this. And you don't have to do anything else for the color. For the reflectance, we can delete the default specular and add Beckman. Set these to additive. Same thing, 10% roughness. And let's see what else I have in here. For the color, we can do Fresnel, so we have a nice fall off here, as you can see. And for the bump, it's going to be the same as the one we did before for the floor. So we can just go to the bump, right click, copy, and go back to our frame material, turn on the bump, and right click, paste. This is going to be our bump. And also for the reflectance, we can add a few speculars in there. So we'll do the first one at 30%, and We're gonna bring this overall reflectance to 60 for the Beckman. We'll bring this specular down to 80, and let's give it a little bit of fall off, 10% maybe. And we're gonna copy this one more time, increase the overall strength to 100% for the third specular, and we'll do the width to 10% and strength to 100. And also for this one, we'll bring this up to about 80. And we can change the colors. This one we're going to make it a little bit darker, so 75% white, and this one's going to be 100% white. And this is basically it for our frame material. So let's drop that on there for the frame. And I think it changed the other material, so I think we have to reapply the luminance material. So we can just highlight, reapply, and go back to object mode, and we're all set here. And for the, I think, let me open this up. Yeah, I think the bump is a little bit too strong on the frame, so we can actually lower it down. So we can go to bump. Yeah, it's still at 20. It's supposed to be at 5. So make sure you change that. And now we're good to go. And for the final two, for the inside and the outline, we'll just make sure it's touching the floor all the way. And double click, create another material. Let's rename this outline. And actually what we can do is take the same frame material. I just hold control and copy it. And in here, we'll rename this outline. We'll take the color and make it darker. So maybe 60% of the same color. And for the reflectance, let's see here. We'll do a custom bump map on this one. And let's just put in another noise. I'll bring the overall strength to about 10%. And for the noise, we'll do dents. And this one really has a really cool effect when the light hits it, so that should work. And that's about it. So let's apply this material to the outline, just like this. And now we're going to use the same material that we created for the inside and the frame. So we can just take the frame material and also apply it to the inside of the letter. So now we have, well, I think I had two of them selected, so we can just delete the one that was in an outline. So we have a darker blue on the outline, and then we have light blue on the inside and the frame. And this is basically it for the materials. And now we can just tweak the render settings a little bit, and let's see what kind of result we can get. So let's change this from exterior preview to we can just do it manually. So we'll do QMC, light mapping, 6000 path count here, and for the gamma we can try 1.2, and that should be good. And for the physical, we can bump up the overall look. Let's just try automatic, bring the noise a little bit, 10%, and we'll bump the shadow to 4 and ambient occlusion to 3. Oops. And that's basically it. And now we can play around with lights, and I think maybe the bottom one can be dimmed down a little bit, so we'll do 60, and let's just zoom out and turn on and off just to see how much it affects the overall look. And now let's try the frontal. Yeah, the frontal is a little bit too strong, so what we can do is take it and bring back the fall off, maybe something like that. Let's try it again. Yeah, that's pretty good. And now the highlight, and this is basically the main light that's illuminating the overall scene. Let's just see how much it affects. Yeah, this is like the main light. So what we can do is go to the side view here and play around with this and see how much we can control. Because all I want to do is make sure it affects only the half of the logo or the icon. So I don't want it to be too bright, but something like this should work. So now what we can do is jump back to our camera and give it a quick render and see what that looks like with materials on it. So as you can see, guys, the render just finished. One of the lights, I think the highlight, the IS light, is way too strong, and as you can see, is really blowing out our scene. But other lights are pretty okay. They're working fine. So the last thing you probably have to do is play around with this light alone and position it in the right spot. In my previous case, I guess I got it right in the first time, but sometimes you have to play around and see which position of the light works for you. And if I jump back to my previous example, as you can see, for this light, it's the same light that was in the previous example. It was kind of in the perfect angle, and it was hitting the frame really nicely to get that nice result that you seen in the thumbnail of this video. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and hopefully this video helped you. Please leave it a like, subscribe, and I will see you in my next video, guys. Goodbye.